Alright, the Amazon Fire Phone. This is going to be an honest review of the hardware, the software, and how this phone compares to some of the other top-of-the-line phones on the market today. It is Sunday, July 27, 2014. Stay tuned for the honest review of the Amazon Fire Phone. Alright, so jumping right into the hardware here. The lock screen is definitely new, definitely different than anything you've seen before. It has what Amazon's calling dynamic perspective, where you can see the screen is actually moving sort of in 3 dimensions as I turn the phone. And what it's doing is using these 4 built-in cameras to actually look at my face and then move the sort of perspective given what it can see. So if I block my face with the video camera here, it actually doesn't really pick up the movement so well, and so it doesn't actually see me. See, like that. But if I move my face around, then it'll see me again. We've seen this something similar to this with the iPhone 5 and 5S with iOS 7. You know, you get the little bit of movement there in the background based on, I think it's using Apple's gyroscopes in there. So that's similar, but it's not nearly as sort of interesting and cool as the way Amazon has done it here. That being said, you know, that's probably one of the heaviest advertised features of this phone. And to cut this review, you know, very, very short, it's probably the only nice thing about the phone. I'll save you guys a few minutes here from watching. You know, given that the only thing really groundbreaking about this phone is the software, the hardware is pretty standard. It's a black slab. It actually reminds me a lot of the Nexus 4. I mean, I don't know if this is glass or plastic back here, but it's very similar to the Nexus 4 design. You know, very, very simple, you know, very sleek. It sort of feels heavy in your hand. I mean, if you compare this to an iPhone 5S, dramatically lighter in the 5S compared to the Amazon Fire Phone. But it feels good. It feels premium. It feels solid. You know, you've got a nice sort of speaker cutouts here with a really solid USB 2 micro connector in the bottom. All in all, the phone feels good in your hand. I like the weight. I like the balance. I like the sort of 4.7-inch display. I think, in my opinion, 4.7 inches is the sweet spot. I think any company that comes out with a 4.7-inch phone, like the Motorola Moto X, the Amazon Fire Phone, and hopefully the new iPhone 6 will be 4.7 inches. To me, that's the perfect fit of a large screen size, yet still easy to use with one hand. Here we've got a 2.1 megapixel front-facing camera that's used for photos. Those are different than the dynamic perspective cameras. In the back, we have a 13 megapixel rear camera with an f2 lens, which is a pretty wide aperture lens considering what else is on there on the market. Single LED flash. This camera does have optical image stabilization, which is nice. And, you know, otherwise the hardware is pretty much everything that you've seen on any other phone here. We've got a home button, SIM slot, which is over here, dedicated camera / Firefly button. We'll get into Firefly later, and volume rockers, and a power button and a headphone port as well. It's going to have LTE. This is the 32 gigabyte model. This comes with 2 gigs of RAM. It's got a Qualcomm quad-core 2.2 gigahertz chip with an Adreno 330 GPU and blah, blah, blah. It's all specs. It all doesn't matter because it doesn't really... those specs don't change how the phone looks, feels, and operates in your hand. I mean, the biggest thing we're going to talk about here is the user experience, which Amazon has really tried hard to sort of customize and make different than everything else you've seen out on the market right now. So let's get into the software and some of the other features about this phone. You know, just in the last couple minutes of standing here holding onto it, it's getting hot in my hand, and that's sort of annoying because it makes you think that the phone is doing something and running applications in the background or doing something it shouldn't be doing whenever you pick it up and it feels hot. I mean, I can, just by holding it, the back is getting really pretty warm, and I'm not doing anything except looking at the lock screen. So, you know, that's sort of a bummer for me. I really don't like when phones heat up like that. But anyway, getting away from that, we'll jump into the home screen here. There's really no, you know, semblance of Android in this phone. You know, you look at it, and it's definitely heavily skinned with Amazon's, you know, Fire, I don't even know what they call this, Fire interface or Fire home screen, or I'm not sure. But this doesn't look like Android at all, nor does it feel like Android at all. You don't have access to any of the Google apps, which is frustrating. You have access only to the Amazon Android store, or Amazon Market, or whatever you're going to call it. But you know, you go in the App Store here, and like as an example, if I want to use the Gmail app or download the Gmail app, I can't use it because it's not available. I can use the built-in email client, which will sync with Gmail, but I can't use a dedicated Gmail app. That same thing goes for Maps and other Google services. And so if you're heavily invested into Android and the Google ecosystem, it's sort of a letdown to not be able to have those core Google apps on your Android phone, even though, again, this isn't really an Android phone, even though it is an Android phone. Sort of confusing for a lot of people, but you do have access to lots of apps, and they are pretty good, and they do run fast, and they do, install just like you would on any other Android phone. Navigating around the phone is really quick. There's no lag. There's no issues with delays or clunkiness. It's definitely smooth. It's fast. You can see that the dynamic perspective actually works in the app drawer as well. You can see the icons sort of moving around, which is kind of cool, but again, sort of useless. The Amazon store, heavily integrated into this phone. You can buy stuff directly from Amazon. Obviously Amazon wants people to purchase things using this phone, so the store is heavily integrated. But the thing that really bothers me about it sort of not being like an Android phone is that there's no home screen. There's no, place to put your widgets. There's no place to put your customization. It's very much like an iPhone in this way that you can't change things, right? It's just given to you like this, and it's going to be like this, and you really can't change how things are laid out. You do get neat little shortcuts, like if you do that, you have access to things, and if you do this and do this, you can go over here. And so there's some software tweaks that are pretty cool, that make it different from other phones that you've used, but you can't customize it. And so for me, that's sort of a letdown. I really like the fact that you can customize Android and make it look how you want it to look, and this is just not going to let you do that. You're basically stuck with how Amazon wants you to view and use this phone. So let me give you guys an example here of how Firefly works. It's pretty cool, but it doesn't really work. It's not consistent, right? So if I put on the Scrabble box here, I can actually put the phone up with Firefly running. It will sense it. You heard it beep, right? And it says Scrabble board game, so it got that one right, which is pretty cool, just by the box. And so it's able to identify it. Now if I move this crystal light thing here, scan this, it actually says it's a black and white Easter bunny, but then it also says it's crystal light. And so it actually recognized both parts of this. It recognized the logo. Now there we go again. There's another one. So it got three different things off this barcode and label. So it works. It is actually pretty cool, Firefly, and it's fast, and it's actually sort of fun to use, but it is inconsistent, and so it's not perfect, but it is kind of fun, and you can actually access Firefly by holding down this button and then point it at whatever you want and see what happens. One of the other software features that Amazon has sort of added in this phone is the tilt to access menus. And so you tilt the phone to the right and you get this sort of list of, I guess you'd call it, I don't know if you'd call this a menu or shortcuts, maybe shortcuts I'd call that. And then this way is also another way to sort of add, you can add photos to your text messages that way. You can do a lot of different things. So basically you have two sort of contextual menus that are associated with flicking your wrist from right to left. The downside to this wrist flick is that it sometimes activates when you don't want it to. Like a lot of times you'll be using the dynamic perspective and be like, ooh, look at my fancy icons, and I want to rotate, the phone around. And so when you do that to look at your icons, you end up sort of accidentally flipping your wrist too far, and your menu comes up and it kind of gets in the way. Talking about the browser and the keyboard, everything on this phone feels pretty fast. I've not been disappointed with anything in terms of lag or any kind of, I don't know, inconsistencies with my user experience with the software. I think it's actually pretty good. I like the fact that the browser's fast. I like the keyboard. It kind of reminds me of a Windows Phone keyboard a little bit. And there's actually elements of like Palm OS in here too, Web OS, with sort of these things. These things remind me of the cards in Palm OS, with your little bit of history based on what you've done. If we scroll over to like photos and stuff, I like this layout. I don't really like the fact that it's, as I said before, it's not really consistent with Android, but I think that they've done a good job with how they've done this software. I think that it is smooth, it is sort of intuitive, it is fast, but it's not, again, not similar to other Android phones that you use. You're going to have to relearn basically how to use this phone. let's talk a little bit about the camera. The camera software is really quick. I think it's, you know, on par with some of the other devices out there. It's, you know, it focuses really quickly. You know, the images are fast, they're sharp, they're good quality. You know, it's about the same as other top-of-the-line phones that are out there on the market right now. I wouldn't say it's necessarily much better than any of the other smartphones out there, but I'm going to do a thorough camera test here later on today to see exactly how the images compare between this device and, say, the iPhone 5S or the Nexus 5, some of the other top-of-the-line Android phones. It is quick, it does work, it, you know, is everything you would expect out of a top-of-the-line camera. It does have, you know, HDR and, you know, panorama mode, and so you've got the same features that you would see in other devices. One of the other features that Amazon really heavily sells with this device is its Mayday option, and Mayday actually allows you to connect to a live customer service representative from the Amazon company, and they give you a little window that they actually pop out of and give you support, which is kind of cool because otherwise you're left stuck with getting on YouTube or going to a friend or a family member to give you help with your phone, but Amazon lets you do that built into the device, and we'll actually run through a demo here to see.
Hello, my name is Stephanie and I'll be your tech advisor this evening.
Hi.
May I have your name?
Stephen Ambrose.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
What can I do for you today?
I just got this new Amazon Fire phone, and I put a different SIM in it, and it's asking for a SIM unlock code. I was wondering if you guys can give that to me.
Okay, let me check that out for you and research that for you.
Okay.
Do you mind if I put you on hold while I research it?
Nope, that's great.
All right, please hold.
Thanks.
Thank you for holding and being very patient with me.
No problem.
Okay, I was looking around and I was trying to see if I could find anything about the SIM card password.
Yep.
I would say that the AT&T company would know.
Okay.
If you like, I can see about trying to transfer you to AT&T.
That's fine. I mean, I can call AT&T or go to AT&T here as well. I didn't know who to start with, if I should start with you guys or with AT&T first. Do you know...
AT&T. If it involves SIM card, any type of text messaging, calling, I'd say that would be AT&T.
Okay.
You can still try with us just in case, you know, if you would like.
Yeah.
But with stuff like that, I would say AT&T company.
Okay. I was just curious because the phone, even though the AT&T is the service provider, the phone is actually what's locked to AT&T, you know, and since I paid full price for the phone, I was thinking I could unlock it, and I didn't know if you guys had the code or if AT&T had the code, since it's an Amazon, you know, device. So I didn't know.
Right. Well, with the unlocked phone, with it being unlocked, it's still with AT&T.
Okay.
So you would have to go to them to talk to them about that, about the phone. Take it to them, and they'll be able to take care of you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Is there anything else I can do for you today?
Nope, that's it.
All right. You have a wonderful day, Steve.
Thanks. You too. See ya. Bye. Not solved. So anyway, there's an example of Mayday and the fact that the Amazon Mayday service didn't fix my problem, but at least she looked into it, and at least she told me I need to contact AT&T, which they will probably give me some sort of runaround as well. But I did pay full price for the phone, so I'm thinking I can probably get it unlocked with some more effort, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so final thoughts on this Amazon Fire phone here. You know, I think the biggest thing for me is that this phone leaves me with a feeling of wanting more. And I really don't like that. You know, I think when I look at my iPhone 5S, and I don't have my Nexus here, but when I look at my Nexus 5, each time I think about the iPhone 5, I really enjoy picking it up. I really enjoy holding it. I really enjoy the aesthetic of the body. I like the hardware, and I like what Apple does with their phones. They're just really, really, really nicely designed, nicely built devices. iOS definitely leaves me for wanting more. This phone is jailbroken, and so I tend to jailbreak my phones in order to tweak them a little bit. But iOS also lacks some sort of core applications and core features that I prefer in Android. And so iOS leaves me wanting more, and so I tend to not use my iPhone very much. My Nexus, on the other hand, lacks the hardware aspect that the iPhone has. And so while the software of Android and the fact that it gets updated regularly and frequently, and then I can really customize and tweak my Android, that I really enjoy, but the hardware leaves me for wanting more. The case with the Amazon Fire phone, is that the whole thing wants me to, I want more with the whole device. I think that while the dynamic perspective thing is cool, it definitely doesn't really sell me on the device. I mean, I don't really need this. Like, this doesn't do anything for me. Sure, it's fun to look at. Sure, it's sort of interesting. Maybe if we get a lot of applications that start supporting that, it might be sort of something that makes the phone better. But what really leaves me for wanting more with this phone is the software and the hardware, but primarily the software. There's just nothing special about it. I just leave with this feeling of meh. Sure, it works. Sure, it's fast. Sure, it has apps and email and messaging and calling and, cameras and blah, blah, blah. But it just doesn't draw me to it. I don't get drawn into this phone. I just don't find the features that great. I don't think I'll ever really use Firefly. I don't really think I'll ever want to use Amazon so much that I have to use this phone. I mean, I'll just go on my laptop and go to the Amazon store. I'm not compelled by this device in the least bit. I think it's just boring. I think that Amazon's tried, and I think that they've sort of done a good job with, their first shot here. But is it good enough when you compare what else you can buy for $650? Or the Nexus, which is half the price and unlocked for $350? I just don't think they've done it. I think that they've, really missed the mark here in terms of an overall satisfying device. I think that they've given it a good shot. I think that it's definitely not something that's going to be popular. I think I would consider it sort of a failure in my opinion. I think that they need to refocus either on not building phones or on making phones that are just better, I guess. I mean, I don't really know how else to describe it. I think that many people will be disappointed in this phone when they compare what they can get with their hard-earned dollars from Apple and from other Android manufacturers. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this comprehensive, honest review of the Amazon Fire Phone. Don't forget to check out everything else I have on YouTube.